Sadness, a great and dampening sadness, or emptiness, is what most people would describe as losing a loved one at the hands of death. That is what a mother who had just watched her son take his last breath on the hospital bed felt. She felt like her reason to live was over. She had nobody else, a divorcee, an independent woman. All she could do was accept fate. She got up, moved to the top of the building to catch her breath. There, her phone rang. It was an unknown number, but she picked it up anyway. The next thing she heard was the voice of her son, who she just watched die 30 minutes ago. "It's all right, Mom. I'll be fine. Take care. I love you." Don B. Owens' experience made a hit in Fate magazine in September 1976 as a detailed an experience, almost out of a horror movie or fantasy, depending on one's perception. It explained his relationship with a close friend named Lee Epps, who had passed away in his coma. Before his sad passing, Epps had been in the neighborhood and had a great relationship with Don and his wife, Ethel, in Toledo, Ohio. Now, days prior to Lee's passing, their old friend had seemingly moved up without notice, and from there on, they had lost contact with him. Going forward, Ethel, while at home, received a call on her telephone, which would leave her in a lot. Once she picked up the call, she instantly knew it was Lee talking from his voice, but it was his words that left her in a lot of confusion. "Sis, tell Don I'm feeling real bad. Never felt this way before. Tell him to get in touch with me the minute he comes in. It's important, sis." After supposedly Lee's distressing message, the call was cut, and no matter how many times Ethel tried the number, she couldn't get through again. Don arrived that evening as well and was shocked as much as Ethel by the events that occurred. He too tried to no avail in reaching Lee, though in utter shock. The couple would soon learn that Lee had been in a coma at a hospital blocks from their home. Soon after as well, he would pass on to the beyond without saying goodbye. This was sad to learn for the couple, but what intrigued their curiosity was how Lee was able to reach out to them while in a coma. After their story made its way to the public in the magazine, parapsychologist D. Scott Rogo took on the case of searching these instances as many more fellows came forward with their own recounts of having communicated with the dead through the telephone. His research, alongside Raymond Bayless, was outlined in their book, Phone Calls from the Dead, in 1979. Scott Rogo did a thorough job of dissecting several cases and examining their probabilities, though it was hard to actually find any true or tangible evidence as most witnesses had not prepared for their experiences. He did come to the conclusion that these calls were legitimate and actually more rampant than many have told. Being more skeptical, Scott Rogo pointed out the possibility that these calls were factual, but more of a setup than they were a connection to an otherly world. He also stressed the possibility that those witnesses have all been hearing words in their minds, made up by their minds to suit their longings. A similar case he used was the hallucination many at the time had experienced, hearing their doorbells ring only to discover that there was never anyone at the door. Scott Rogo and his partner, however, were not the only ones on the case. Many other enthusiasts of strange phenomena have come forward with their findings on these calls, one actually having experienced them personally. Frenchman Kasperwich had also created a book centralizing the calls from the dead, a combination of his research, both personal and extended, and several other cases. In Kasperwich's experience, he had a dog which he had sadly lost to cancer. On a drive with his mom and brother a few days after the passing of his best friend, Kasperwich sat in total anguish, still in pain from the loss. Thinking out loud, he cried out to the hearing of everyone present, "Au paradis j'espère, qu'on y retrouve nos j'aimerais bien recevoir, Seigneur, This was in French and translated to, "In heaven, I hope we meet our dogs again. I really wish I could get a sign." It would seem that Kasperwicz's wish had been heard by the stars, as he could swear he got a sign. 1 minute later, Kasperwicz received a text from a named Julie, one he had known no one at the time bearing. It read, "Salut j'ai bien, reçu mon intégration, tu, ce bien Julie." This in English translated to, "Hi, my arrival went great. Everything is going well, Julie." This was quite the timing, as not only would it fit the idea that a soul that passed on would try to let their loved ones know of their arrival when requested, but also, this was done at school resumption time of the year, pointing to the possibility that someone named Julie had mistakenly texted him. It also was strange that though he didn't name his dog Julie, it was actually a female dog he lost. Kasperwicz, though in awe, decided not to pay the strange text that much attention. However, the next set of days would present strange calls that could not be solved nor stopped. Kasperwicz's home phone would occasionally receive long calls from an unknown number over and over again, and everything they tried to communicate with the caller, there was no reply, and the call would just cut. These series of events carried on for a long while before finally, Kasperwicz had picked up one of the strange calls and heard a clicking sound that resembled a Morse code. Noticing this, Kasperwicz used his means to communicate with the other side. After a while on questions that were either answered yes or no, he got more personal, asking questions only those living at the house would know of. One of these questions being if his dog died from old age. To this question, he was answered no, which was right, as his dog had died from cancer. At this point, strange noises were heard, and lastly, the deep breaths of a dog were heard. It sounded and reminded Kasperwicz of his dog, who had made similar deep breaths while suffering from the illness. The rest of the calls would have the same deep breath until there weren't any calls to his home line. This experience sparked Kasperwicz's interest in the series of calls of beyond and seeing how he wasn't the only one experiencing them. It was clear that he was onto something. Kasperwicz's research has proved to be very useful as he was able to pinpoint various similarities between these calls from the dead. Those were: 1. These calls were done mostly on a day or significant occasion to the dead, like an anniversary, birthday, or more. 2. There has been an occurrence of either hearing, breathing, or static on the line and/or a metallic or distant voice. 3. These calls occur to a person of interest, maybe a friend, or directly to the person whom the dead wish to reach out to. 4. The calls were made on a switched-off cell phone or one without power. 5. Cell phone operators on these calls have been unable to trace the calls. 6. Voice messages are being left without a call made first. 7. These calls are done to either give the person of interest reassurances or warnings. 8. Use of certain phrases or means to identify the deceased calling and having a way to prove almost certainly that the calls are authentic.